Chapter 7. Gerhardt was in despair. He did not know anyone to whom he could appeal between the hours of 2 and 9 o'clock in the morning. He went back to talk with his wife, and then to his post of duty. What was to be done? He could think only of one friend who was able or possibly willing to do anything. This was the glass manufacturer Hammond, but he was not in this city. Gerhardt did not know this, however. When 9 o'clock came, he went alone to the court, for it was thought advisable that the others should stay away. Mrs. Gerhardt was to hear immediately what happened. He would come right back. When Sebastian was lined up inside the dock, he had to wait a long time, for there were several prisoners ahead of him. Finally, his name was called, and the boy was pushed forward to the bar. "Stealing coal, Your Honor, and resisting arrest," explained the officer who had arrested him. The magistrate looked at Sebastian closely. He was unfavorably impressed by the lad's scratched and wounded face. "Well, young man," he said, "what have you to say for yourself? How did you get your black eye?" Sebastian looked at the judge but did not answer. "I arrested him," said the detective. "He was on one of the company's cars. He tried to break away from me, and when I held him, he assaulted me. This man here was a witness," he added, turning to the railroad hand who had helped him. "Is that where he struck you?" asked the court, observing the detective's swollen jaw. "Yes, sir," he returned, glad of an opportunity to be further avenged. "If you please," put in Gerhardt, leaning forward, he is my boy. He was sent to get the coal. We don't mind what they pick up around the yard," interrupted the detective, "but he was throwing it off the cars to half a dozen others." "Can't you earn enough to keep from taking coal off the coal cars?" asked the court. But before either father or son had time to answer, he added, "What is your business?" "Car builder," said Sebastian. "And what do you do?" he questioned, addressing Gerhardt. "I'm watchman at Miller's furniture factory." Said the court, feeling that Sebastian's attitude remained sullen and contentious. "Well, this young man might be let off on the coal-stealing charge, but he seems to be somewhat too free with his fists. Columbus is altogether too rich in that sort of thing. $10. "If you please," began Gerhardt, but the court officer was already pushing him away. I don't want to hear any more about it," said the judge. "He's stubborn anyhow. What's the next case?" Gerhardt made his way over to his boy, abashed and yet very glad it was no worse. Somehow, he thought, he could raise the money. Sebastian looked at him solicitously as he came forward. "It's all right," said Bass soothingly. "He didn't give me half a chance to say anything." "I'm only glad it wasn't more," said Gerhardt nervously. "We will try and get the money." Going home to his wife, Gerhardt informed the troubled household of the result. Mrs. Gerhardt stood white and yet relieved, for $10 seemed something that might be had. Jennie heard the whole story with open mouth and wide eyes. It was a terrible blow to her. Poor Bass. He was always so lively and good-natured, it seemed awful that he should be in jail. Gerhardt went hurriedly to Hammond's fine residence, but he was not in the city. He thought then of a lawyer by the name of Jenkins, whom he knew in a casual way. But Jenkins was not at his office. There were several grocers and coal merchants whom he knew well enough, but he owed them money. Pastor Wundt might let him have it, but the agony such a disclosure to that worthy would entail held him back. He did call on one or two acquaintances, but these, surprised at the unusual and peculiar request, excused themselves. At 4 o'clock he returned home, weary and exhausted. "I don't know what to do," he said despairingly. If I could only think. Jennie thought of Brander, but the situation had not accentuated her desperation to the point where she could brave her father's opposition and his terrible insult to the senator, so keenly remembered to go and ask. Her watch had been pawned a second time, and she had no other means of obtaining money. The family council lasted until 10:30, but still there was nothing decided. Mrs. Gerhardt persistently and monotonously turned one hand over in the other and stared at the floor. Gerhardt ran his hand through his reddish-brown hair distractedly. "It's no use," he said at last. "I can't think of anything." "Go to bed, Jennie," said her mother solicitously. "Get the others to go. There's no use in their sitting up. I may think of something." "You go to bed." Jennie went to her room, but the very thought of repose was insupportable. She had read in the paper, shortly after her father's quarrel with the senator, that the latter had departed for Washington. There had been no notice of his return. Still, he might be in the city. She stood before a short, narrow mirror that surmounted a shabby bureau, thinking. Her sister Veronica, with whom she slept, was already composing herself to dreams. Finally, a grim resolution fixed itself in her consciousness. She would go and see Senator Brander. If he were in town, he would help Bess. Why shouldn't she? He loved her. He had asked over and over to marry her. Why should she not go and ask him for help? She hesitated a little while. Then, hearing Veronica breathing regularly, she put on her hat and jacket and noiselessly opened the door into the sitting room to see if anyone were stirring. There was no sound save that of Gerhardt rocking nervously to and fro in the kitchen. There was no light save that of her own small room lamp and a gleam from under the kitchen door. She turned and blew the former out, then slipped quietly to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the night. A waning moon was shining, and a hushed sense of growing life filled the air, for it was nearing spring again. As Jennie hurried along the shadowy streets, the arc light had not yet been invented. She had a sinking sense of fear. What was this rash thing she was about to do? How would the senator receive her? What would he think? She stood stock still, wavering and doubtful. Then the recollection of Bass in his night cell came over her again, and she hurried on. The character of the Capitol Hotel was such that it was not difficult for a woman to find ingress through the ladies' entrance to the various floors of the hotel at any hour of the night. The hotel, not unlike many others of the time, was in no sense loosely conducted, but its method of supervision in places was lax. Any person could enter, and by applying at a rear entrance to the lobby, gain the attention of the clerk. Otherwise, not much notice was taken of those who came and went. When she came to the door, it was dark, save for a low light burning in the entryway. The distance to the senator's room was only a short way along the hall of the second floor. She hurried up the steps, nervous and pale, but giving no other outward sign of the storm that was surging within her. When she came to his familiar door, she paused. She feared that she might not find him in his room. She trembled again to think that he might be there. A light shone through the transom, and summoning all her courage, she knocked. A man coughed and bestirred himself. His surprise as he opened the door knew no bounds. "Why, Jennie!" he exclaimed. "How delightful! I was thinking of you. Come in, come in." He welcomed her with an eager embrace. "I was coming out to see you. Believe me, I was. I was thinking all along, how could I straighten this matter out? And now you come. But what's the trouble?" He held her at arm's length and studied her distressed face. The fresh beauty of her seemed to him like cut lilies wet with dew. He felt a great surge of tenderness. "I have something to ask you," she at last brought herself to say. "My brother is in jail. We need $10 to get him out, and I didn't know where else to go." "My poor child," he said, chafing her hands. "Where else should you go? Haven't I always told you to come to me?" "Don't you know, Jenny, I would do anything in the world for you?" "Yes," she gasped. "Well, then don't worry about that anymore. But won't fate ever cease striking at you, poor child? How did your brother come to get in jail?" "They caught him throwing coal down from the cars," she replied. "Ah," he replied, his sympathies touched and awakened. Here was this boy, arrested and fined for what fate was practically driving him to do. Here was this girl pleading with him at night in his room for what to her was a great necessity, $10. To him, a mere nothing. "I will arrange about your brother," he said quickly. "Don't worry. I can get him out in half an hour. You sit here now and be comfortable until I return." He waved her to his easy chair beside a large lamp and hurried out of the room. Brander knew the sheriff who had personal supervision of the county jail. He knew the judge who had administered the fine. It was but a 5 minutes task to write a note to the judge asking him to revoke the fine, for the sake of the boy's character, and send it by a messenger to his home. Another 10 minutes is tasked to go personally to the jail and ask his friend the sheriff to release the boy, then and there. "Here is the money," he said. "If the fine is revoked, you can return it to me. Let him go now." The sheriff was only too good to comply. He hastened below to personally supervise the task, and Bass, a very much astonished boy, was set free. No explanations were vouchsafed him. "That's all right now," said the turkey. "You're at liberty. Run along home and don't let them catch you at anything like that again." Bass went his way wondering, and the ex-senator returned to his hotel trying to decide just how this delicate situation should be handled. Obviously, Jenny had not told her father of the mission. She had come as a last resource. She was now waiting for him in his room. There are crises in all men's lives when they waver between the strict fulfillment of justice and duty and the great possibilities for personal happiness which another line of conduct seems to assure. And the dividing line is not always marked and clear. He knew that the issue of taking her, even as his wife, was made difficult by the senseless opposition of her father. The opinion of the world brought up still another complication. Supposing he should take her openly, what would the world say? She was a significant type, emotionally, that he knew. There was something there, artistically, temperamentally, which was far and beyond the keenest suspicion of the herd. He did not know himself quite what it was, but he felt a largeness of feeling not altogether squared with intellect, or perhaps better yet, experience, which was worthy of any man's desire. This remarkable girl, he thought, seeing her clearly in his mind's eye. Meditating as to what he should do, he returned to his hotel in the room. As he entered, he was struck anew with her beauty, and with the irresistible appeal of her personality. In the glow of the shaded lamp, she seemed a figure of marvelous potentiality. "Well," he said, endeavoring to appear calm, "I have looked after your brother. He's out." She rose. "Oh," she exclaimed, clasping her hands and stretching her arms out toward him. There were tears of gratefulness in her eyes. He saw them and stepped close to her. "Jenny, for heaven's sake, don't cry," he entreated. "You angel!" You sister of mercy, to think you should have to add tears to your other sacrifices. He drew her to him, and then all the caution of years deserted him. There was a sense both of need and of fulfillment in his mood. At last, in spite of other losses, fate had brought him what he most desired: love, a woman whom he could love. He took her in his arms and kissed her again and again. The English Jeffreys has told us that it requires 150 years to make a perfect maiden. From all enchanted things of earth and air this preciousness has been drawn. From the south wind that breathed a century and a half over the green wheat, from the perfume of the growing grasses waving over heavy-laden clover and laughing veronica, hiding the green finches, baffling the bee, from rose-lined hedge, woodbine, and cornflower, azure blue where yellowing wheat stalks crowd up under the shadow of green firs. All yellowing, all the devious brooklets is sweetness where the iris stays the sunlight. All the wild woods hold of beauty, all the broad hills of time, and freedom thrice 100 years repeated. 100 years of cowslips, bluebells, violets, purple spring and golden autumn, sunshine, shower, and dewy mornings, the night, immortal, all the rhythm of time unrolling. A chronicle unwritten, and past all power of writing, who shall preserve a record of the petals that fell from the roses a century ago? The swallows to the housetops, 300 times, think of that! Thence she sprang, and the world yearns toward her beauty as to flowers that are past. The loveliness of 17 is centuries old. That is why passion is almost sad. If you have understood and appreciated the beauty of harebells 300 times repeated, if the quality of the roses, of the music, of the ruddy mornings and evenings of the world has ever touched your heart, if all beauty were passing and you were given these things to hold in your arms before the world slipped away, would you give them up? Chapter 8. The significance of the material and spiritual changes which sometimes overtake us are not very clear at the time. A sense of shock, a sense of danger, and then apparently we subside to old ways. But the changes come. Never again, here or elsewhere, will we be the same. Jennie, pondering after the subtle emotional turn which her evening's sympathetic expedition had taken, was lost in a vague confusion of emotions. She had no definite realization of what social and physical changes this new relationship to the senator might entail. She was not conscious as yet of that shock which the possibility of maternity, even under the most favorable conditions, must bring to the average woman. Her present attitude was one of surprise, wonder, uncertainty. And at the same time, she experienced a genuine feeling of quiet happiness. Brander was a good man. Now he was closer to her than ever. He loved her. Because of this new relationship, a change in her social condition was to inevitably follow. Life was to be radically different from now on, was different at this moment. Brander assured her over and over of his enduring affection. "I tell you, Jennie," he repeated as she was leaving, "I don't want you to worry. This emotion of mine got the best of me, but I'll marry you. I've been carried off my feet, but I'll make it up to you. Go home and say nothing at all. Caution your brother if it isn't too late. Keep your own counsel, and I will marry you and take you away. I can't do it right now. I don't want to do it here, but I'm going to Washington and I'll send for you. And here." He reached for his purse and took from it $100, practically all he had with him. Take that. I'll send you more tomorrow. You're my girl now, remember that. You belong to me. He embraced her tenderly. She went out into the night, thinking. No doubt he would do as he said. She dwelt in imagination upon the possibilities of a new and fascinating existence. Of course he would marry her. Think of it. She would go to Washington, that far-off place, and her father and mother, they would not need to work so hard anymore. And Bass and Martha, she fairly glowed as she recounted to herself the many ways in which she could help them all. A block away she waited for Brander, who accompanied her to her own gate, and waited while she made a cautious reconnaissance. She slipped up the steps and tried the door. It was open. She paused a moment to indicate to her lover that she was safe, and entered. All was silent within. She slipped to her own room and heard Veronica breathing. She went quietly to where Bass slept with George. He was in bed, stretched out as if asleep. When she entered, he asked, "Is that you, Jenny?" "Yes." "Where have you been?" "Listen," she whispered. "Have you seen Papa and Mama?" "Yes." "Did they know I'd gone out?" "Ma did. She told me not to ask after you. Where have you been?" "I went to see Senator Brander for you." "Oh, that was it. They didn't say why they let me out." "Don't tell anyone," she pleaded. "I don't want anyone to know. You know how Papa feels about him." "All right," he replied. But he was curious as to what the ex-senator thought, what he had done, and how she had appealed to him. She explained briefly that she heard her mother come to the door. "Jenny," she whispered. Jenny went out. "Oh, why did you go?" she asked. "I couldn't help it, Mom," she replied. "I thought I must do something." "Why did you stay so long?" "He wanted to talk to me," she answered evasively. Her mother looked at her nervously, wanly. "I have been so afraid. Oh, so afraid. Your father went to your room, but I said you were asleep. He locked the front door, but I opened it again. When Bass came in, he wanted to call you, but I persuaded him until morning." Again she looked wistfully at her daughter. "I'm all right, Mama," said Jenny encouragingly. "I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. Go to bed. How does he think Bass got out?" "He doesn't know. He thought maybe they just let him go because he couldn't pay the fine." Jenny laid her hand lovingly on her mother's shoulder. "Go to bed," she said. She was already years older in thought and act. She felt as though she must help her mother now as well as herself. The days which followed were ones of dreamy uncertainty to Jenny. She went over in her mind these traumatic events time and time and time again. It was not such a difficult matter to tell her mother that the senator had talked again of marriage, that he proposed to come and get her after his next trip to Washington, that he had given her $100 and intended to give her more. But of that other matter, the one all-important thing, she could not bring herself to speak. It was too sacred. The balance of the money that he had promised her arrived by messenger the following day. $400 in bills, with the admonition that she should put it in a local bank. The ex-senator explained that he was already on his way to Washington, but that he would come back or send for her. "Keep a stout heart," he wrote. "There are better days in store for you." Brander was gone, and Jenny's fate was really in the balance, but her mind still retained all of the heart innocence and unsophistication of her youth. A certain gentle wistfulness was the only outward change in her demeanor. He would surely send for her. There was the mirage of a distant country and wondrous scenes looming up in her mind. She had a little fortune in the bank, more than she had ever dreamed of, with which to help her mother. There were natural girlish anticipations of good still holding over, which made her less apprehensive than she could otherwise possibly have been. All nature, life, possibility was in the balance. It might turn good or ill, but with so inexperienced a soul it would not be entirely evil until it was so. How a mind under such uncertain circumstances could retain so comparatively placid a vein is one of those marvels which find their explanation in the inherent trustfulness of the spirit of youth. It is not often that the minds of men retain the perceptions of their younger days. The marvel is not that one should thus retain, but that any should ever lose them, go the world over. And after you have put away the wonder and the tenderness of youth, what is there left? The few sprigs of green that sometimes invade the barrenness of your materialism. The few glimpses of summer which flash past the eye of the wintry soul. The half hours off during the long tedium of burrowing. These reveal to the hardened earth-seeker the universe which the youthful mind has with it always. No fear and no favor. The open fields and the light upon the hills. Morning, noon, night. Stars. The bird calls. The waters purl. These are the natural inheritance of the mind of the child. Men call it poetic, those who are hardened, fanciful. In the days of their youth it was natural, but the receptiveness of youth has departed, and they cannot see. How this worked out in her personal actions was to be seen only in a slightly accentuated wistfulness, a touch of which was in every task. Sometimes she would wonder that no letter came, but at the same time she would recall the fact that he had specified a few weeks, and hence the 6 that actually elapsed did not seem so long. In the meanwhile, the distinguished ex-senator had gone light-heartedly to his conference with the president. He had joined in a pleasant round of social calls, and he was about to pay a short country visit to some friends in Maryland, when he was seized with a slight attack of fever, which confined him to his room for a few days. He felt a little irritated that he should be laid up just at this time, but never suspected that there was anything serious in his indisposition. Then the doctor discovered that he was suffering from a virulent form of typhoid, the ravages of which took away his senses for a time and left him very weak. He was thought to be convalescing. However, when just 6 weeks after he had last parted with Jennie, he was seized with a sudden attack of heart failure and never regained consciousness. Jennie remained blissfully ignorant of his illness and did not even see the heavy typed headlines of the announcement of his death until Bass came home that evening. "Look here, Jennie," he said excitedly. "Brander's dead." He held up the newspaper, on the first column of which was printed in the heavy block type, "Death of ex-Senator Brander. Sudden passing of Ohio's distinguished son. Succumbs to heart failure at the Arlington in Washington. Recent attack of typhoid from which he was thought to be recovering proves fatal. Notable phases of a remarkable career." Jennie looked back at it in blank amazement. "Dead?" she exclaimed. "There it is in the paper," returned Bass, his tone being that of one who was imparting a very interesting piece of news. "He died at 10 o'clock this morning." Chapter 9. Jennie took the paper with but ill-concealed trembling, and went into the adjoining room. There she stood by the front window and looked at it again, a sickening sensation of dread holding her as though in a trance. "He is dead," was all that her mind could formulate for the time. And as she stood there, the voice of Bass recounting the fact that Gerhardt in the adjoining room sounded in her ears. "Yes, he is dead," she heard him say. And once again she tried to get some conception of what it meant to her. But her mind seemed a blank. A moment later, Mrs. Gerhardt joined her. She had heard Bass's announcement and had seen Jennie leave the room, but her trouble with Gerhardt over the senator had caused her to be careful of any display of emotion. No conception of the real state of affairs ever having crossed her mind, she was only interested in seeing how Jennie would take this sudden annihilation of her hopes. "Isn't it too bad?" she said with real sorrow. "To think that he should have to die just when he was going to do so much for you, for us all." She paused, expecting some word of agreement, but Jennie remained unwontedly dumb. "I wouldn't feel badly," continued Mrs. Gerhardt. "It can't be helped. He meant to do a good deal, but you mustn't think of that now. It's all over, and it can't be helped, you know." She paused again, and still Jennie remained motionless and mute. Mrs. Gerhardt, seeing how useless her words were, concluded that Jennie wished to be alone, and she went away. Still Jennie stood there, and now, as the real significance of the news began to formulate itself into consecutive thought, she began to realize the wretchedness of her position, its helplessness. She went into her bedroom and sat down upon the side of the bed, from which position she saw a very pale, distraught face staring at her from out of the small mirror. She looked at it uncertainly. Could that really be her own countenance? "I'll have to go away," she thought, and began with the courage of despair to wonder what refuge would be open to her. In the meantime, the evening meal was announced, and to maintain appearances she went out and joined the family. The naturalness of her part was very difficult to sustain. Gerhardt observed her subdued condition without guessing the depth of emotion which it covered. Bass was too much interested in his own affairs to pay particular attention to anybody. During the days that followed, Jennie pondered over the difficulties of her position and wondered what she should do. Money she had, it was true, but no friends, no experience, no place to go. She'd always lived with her family. She began to feel unaccountable sinkings of spirit. Nameless and formless fears seemed to surround and haunt her. Once, when she arose in the morning, she felt an uncontrollable desire to cry. And frequently thereafter, this feeling would seize upon her at the most inopportune times. Mrs. Gerhardt began to note her moods, and one afternoon she resolved to question her daughter. "Now, you must tell me what's the matter with you," she said quietly. "Jennie, you must tell your mother everything." Jennie, to whom confession had seemed impossible under the sympathetic persistence of her mother, broke down at last and made the fatal confession. Mrs. Gerhardt stood there, too dumb with misery to give vent to a word. "Oh," she said at last, a great wave of self-accusation sweeping over her. "It's all my fault. I might have known, but we'll do what we can." She broke down and sobbed aloud. After a time, she went back to the washing she had to do and stood over her tub, rubbing and crying. The tears ran down her cheeks and dropped into the suds. Once in a while she stopped and tried to dry her eyes with her apron, but they soon filled again. Now that the first shock had passed, there came the vivid consciousness of ever-present danger. What would Gerhardt do if he learned the truth? He had often said that if ever one of his daughters should act like some of those he knew, he would turn her out of doors. She should not stay under my roof, he had exclaimed. I'm so afraid of your father, Mrs. Gerhardt often said to Jenny in this intermediate period. I don't know what he'll say. Perhaps I'd better go away, suggested her daughter. No, she said. He needn't know yet. Wait a while. But in her heart of hearts she knew that the evil day could not be long postponed. One day, when her own suspense had reached such a pitch that it could no longer be endured, Mrs. Gerhardt sent Jenny away with the children, hoping to be able to tell her husband before they returned. All the morning she fidgeted about, dreading the opportune moment and letting him retire to his slumber without speaking. When afternoon came, she did not go out to work, because she could not leave with her painful duty unfulfilled. Gerhardt arose at 4, and still she hesitated, knowing full well that Jenny would soon return and that the specially prepared occasion would then be lost. It is almost certain that she would not have had the courage to say anything if he himself had not brought up the subject of Jenny's appearance. She doesn't look well, he said. There seems to be something the matter with her. Oh, began Mrs. Gerhardt, visibly struggling with her fears and moved to make an end of it at any cost. Jenny's in trouble. I don't know what to do. Gerhardt, who had unscrewed a door lock and was trying to mend it, looked up sharply from his work. What do you mean? He asked. Mrs. Gerhardt had her apron in her hands at the time, her nervous tendency to roll it coming upon her. She tried to summon sufficient courage to explain, but fear mastered her completely. She lifted the apron to her eyes and began to cry. Gerhardt looked at her and rose. He was a man with a Calvin type of face, rather square, with skin sallow and discolored as the result of age and work in the wind and rain. When he was surprised or angry, sparks of light glittered in his eyes. He frequently pushed his hair back when he was troubled, and almost invariably walked the floor. Just now he looked alert and What is that you say? He inquired in German, his voice straining to a hard note. In trouble. Has someone... He paused and flung his hand upward. Why don't you speak? He demanded. I never thought, went on Mrs. Gerhardt, frightened and yet following her own train of thought, that anything like that would happen to her. She was such a good girl. She concluded, to think he should ruin Jenny. By thunder, shouted Gerhardt, giving way to a fury of feeling. I thought so. Brander. Ha, you're fine, man. That comes of letting her go running around at nights, buggy riding and walking the streets. I thought so. God in heaven. He broke from his dramatic attitude and struck out in a fierce stride across the narrow chamber, turning like a caged animal. Ruined, he exclaimed. Ruined! So he has ruined her, has he? Suddenly he stopped like an image jerked by a string. He was directly in front of Mrs. Gerhardt, who had retired to the table at the side of the wall and was standing there pale with fear. He is dead now, he shouted, as if this fact had now first occurred to him. He is dead. He put both hands to his temples as if he feared his brain would give way, and stood looking at her, the mocking irony of the situation seeming to burn in his brain like fire. Dead, he repeated. And Mrs. Gerhardt, fearing for the reason of the man, shrank still farther away, her wits taken up rather with the tragedy of the figure he presented than with the actual substance of his woe. He intended to marry her, she pleaded nervously. He would have married her if he had not died. Would have, shouted Gerhardt. coming out of his trance at the sound of her voice. Would have? That's a fine thing to talk about now. Would have. The hound. May his soul burn in hell. The dog. God. I hope. If I were not a Christian. He clenched his hands, the awfulness of his passion shaking him like a leaf. Mrs. Gerhardt burst into tears, and her husband turned away, his own feelings far too intense for him to have any sympathy with her. He walked to and fro, his heavy step shaking the kitchen floor. After a time he came back, a new phase of the dread calamity having offered itself to his mind. "When did this happen?" he demanded. "I don't know," returned Mrs. Gerhardt, too terror-stricken to tell the truth. "I only found it out the other day." "You lie," he exclaimed in his excitement. "You were always shielding her. It is your fault that she is where she is. If you had let me have my way, there would have been no cause for our trouble tonight." "A fine ending, he went on to himself. "A fine ending. My boy gets into jail. My daughter walks the streets and gets herself talked about. The neighbors come to me with open remarks about my children. And now this scoundrel ruins her. By the God in heaven, I don't know what has got into my children. I don't know how it is," he went on unconsciously, commiserating himself. I try. Every night I pray that the Lord will let me do right, but it is no use. I might work and work. My hands, look at them, are rough with work. All my life I've tried to be an honest man. Now. His voice broke, and it seemed for a moment as if he would give way to tears. Suddenly he turned on his wife, the major passion of anger possessing him. "You are the cause of this," he exclaimed. "You are the sole cause. If you had done as I told you to do, this would not have happened. No, you wouldn't do that. She must go out. Out. She has become a streetwalker. That's what she's become. She has set herself right to go to hell. Let her go. I wash my hands of the whole thing. This is enough for me." He made as if to go off to his little bedroom, but he had no sooner reached the door than he come back. "She shall get out," he said electrically. "She shall not stay under my roof. Tonight. At once. I will not let her enter my door again. I will show her whether she will disgrace me or not." "You mustn't turn her out onto the streets tonight," pleaded Mrs. Gerhardt. "She has no place to go." "Tonight," he repeated, "this very minute. Let her find a home. She did not want this one. Let her go out now. We will see how the world treats her." He walked out of the room, inflexible resolution fixed upon his rugged features. At 5:30, when Mrs. Gerhardt was tearfully going about the duty of getting supper, Jennie returned. Her mother started when she heard the door open, for now she knew the storm would burst afresh. Her father met her on the threshold. "Get out of my sight," he said savagely. "You shall not stay another hour in my house. I don't want to see you any more. Get out." Jennie stood before him, pale, trembling a little and silent. The children she had brought home with her crowded about in frightened amazement. Veronica and Martha, who loved her dearly, began to cry. "What's the matter?" George asked, his mouth open in wonder. "She shall get out," reiterated Gerhardt. "I don't want her under my roof. If she wants to be a streetwalker, let her be one, but she shall not stay here. Pack your things," he added, staring at her. Jennie had no word to say, but the children cried loudly. "Be still," said Gerhardt. "Go into the kitchen." He drove them all out and followed stubbornly himself. Jennie went quietly to her room. She gathered up her few little belongings and began, with tears, to put them into a valise her mother brought her. The little girlish trinkets that she had accumulated from time to time she did not take. She saw them, but thought of her younger sisters and let them stay. Martha and Veronica would have assisted her, but their father forbade them to go. At 6 o'clock, Bass came in, and seeing the nervous assembly in the kitchen, inquired what the trouble was. Gerhardt looked at him grimly, but did not answer. "What's the trouble?" insisted Bass. "What are you all sitting around for?" "He is driving Jennie away," whispered Mrs. Gerhardt tearfully. "What for?" asked Bass, opening his eyes in astonishment. "I shall tell you what for," broke in Gerhardt, still speaking in German. "Because she's a streetwalker. That's what for. She goes and gets herself ruined by a man 30 years older than she is, a man old enough to be her father. Let her get out of this. She shall not stay here another minute." Bass looked about him, and the children opened their eyes. All felt clearly that something terrible had happened, even the little ones. None but Bass understood. "What do you want to send her out tonight for?" he inquired. "There is no time to send a girl out on the streets. This is no time to send a girl out on the streets. Can't she stay here until morning?" "No," said Gerhardt. "He oughtn't to do that," put in the mother. "She goes now," said Gerhardt. "Let that be an end of it." "Where's she going to go?" insisted Bass. "I don't know," Mrs. Gerhardt interpolated weakly. Bass looked around but did nothing until Mrs. Gerhardt motioned him toward the front door when her husband was not looking. Go in, was the import of her gesture. Bass went in, and then Mrs. Gerhardt dared to leave her work and follow. The children stayed a while, but one by one, even they slipped away, leaving Gerhardt alone. When he thought that time enough had elapsed, he arose. In the interval, Jennie had been hastily coached by her mother. Jennie should go to a private boarding house somewhere and send back her address. Bass should not accompany her, but she should wait a little way up the street and he would follow. When her father was away, the mother might get to see her, or Jennie could come home. All else must be postponed until they could meet again. While the discussion was still going on, Gerhardt came in. "Is she going?" he asked harshly. "Yes," answered Mrs. Gerhardt with her first and only note of defiance. Bass said, "What's the hurry?" But Gerhardt frowned too mightily for him to venture on any further remonstrance. Jennie entered, wearing her one good dress and carrying her valise. There was fear in her eyes, for she was passing through a fiery ordeal, but she had become a woman. The strength of love was with her, the support of patience, and the ruling sweetness of sacrifice. Silently she kissed her mother while tears fell fast. Then she turned, and the door closed upon her as she went forth to a new life.